The warehouse felt like an oven that afternoon. Sweat rolled down the workers' faces as they stood around a huge machine that had broken down again, for the third time in just 2 weeks. It was an old grain sorter, but it was the heart of the factory. Without it, everything stopped. People whispered nervously about losing their jobs if things didn't get fixed soon. Some stared at the floor, others wiped their faces, but everyone felt the same fear. Then the sound of footsteps echoed, sharp and steady. Alan Thorne, the CEO of Agrich Industries, had just walked in. Alan Thorne didn't look like he belonged on a factory floor. He wore a crisp suit that seemed too clean for a place filled with dust and grease. But here he was, CEO of Agrich Industries, visiting from the big New York office to see the problems up close. Workers stopped whispering when they saw him. Some stood straighter. The foreman hurried over and said, "Sir, we called a technician, but traffic's bad. Might be a few hours." Alan didn't look happy. He glanced at the stopped machine, then at the worried faces around him. "We're losing time and money," he muttered, shaking his head. His eyes scanned the room, searching for answers, for something, anything that could get things moving again. That's when he noticed someone unexpected near the machine. Alan's eyes landed on a tall, skinny boy standing near the broken machine. He looked about 16, dressed in dusty jeans and old boots. His hands were covered in oil, and his eyes showed a mix of curiosity and nervousness. Alan pointed at him. "Hey, you, know anything about this machine?" His voice was more frustrated than hopeful. The boy stepped forward slowly. "A little. My dad works here. I've helped him fix stuff like this at home." Alan raised an eyebrow and gave a short laugh. "Well, it can't get worse. Give it a try." Some workers chuckled, others whispered, watching closely. The boy knelt beside the machine, ran his fingers along the side, and asked for a screwdriver. No one spoke. Everyone stared. The kid looked calm, but focused, like he'd done this before. Something about him made people stop and watch. Liam took the screwdriver and carefully opened a panel on the side of the machine. His fingers moved fast, but not in a rush. He was clearly thinking through each step. The workers stayed silent, watching every move. After a few minutes, Liam reached into his backpack and pulled out a small piece of bent copper wire. "Sometimes the sensor just needs the right signal," he said quietly. He looped the wire around a contact point, stood up, and pressed a button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the machine let out a loud hum and came back to life. It roared like it hadn't in weeks. The factory floor exploded with cheers. People clapped, some even whistled. The workers looked amazed, and Alan just stood there, blinking in surprise. "That's impressive," he said. "What's your name, kid?" The boy wiped his hands with a rag and replied, Liam Carter." Alan nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. That evening, Alan was having dinner with the regional manager at a quiet local restaurant. They talked about the factory visit and the strange day they'd had. Between bites, Alan mentioned the boy who fixed the machine. "Smart kid," he said. "Liam Carter, I think his name was." The manager froze, fork halfway to his mouth. "Wait, Liam Carter? You mean Tom Carter's son?" Alan looked up. "Yeah, that's right. His dad works in maintenance, doesn't he?" The manager leaned back in his chair and gave a slow nod. Tom didn't just work on that machine. He built it. Before Agrich bought the place, he was known as a local inventor, self-taught. He made that sorter from scrap when the original one broke. It kept the whole co-op alive for years. Alan stared at his plate, stunned. He remembered Tom, an older man he had once brushed off during a factory audit. Now he was starting to realize just how wrong he'd been. Alan leaned back in his chair, thinking hard. He remembered meeting Tom Carter during a factory audit a few years ago. Tom had worn old overalls and talked a lot about machines like they were alive, like they had stories to tell. Alan had seen him as just another worker, maybe too old-fashioned for the company's future. Now it all felt different. He thought about Liam crouched beside that broken sorter, working like he could feel its rhythm. It made sense now. That confidence, that focus, it didn't come from books. It came from growing up around someone who built things with heart. Alan felt something shift inside him. Maybe Tom wasn't just an old inventor. Maybe he was exactly the kind of person the company had forgotten to value. And maybe that needed to change, starting now. The next morning, Alan walked into the back workshop, where tools hung neatly on the walls and the smell of oil filled the air. He found Tom Carter working quietly at a bench. Alan took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology," he said. Tom looked up, surprised but calm. "Your son saved us yesterday. He's sharp, really sharp. Reminds me that smart doesn't always wear a suit." Tom smiled and nodded. He gets it from his mom. "But I taught him something simple. Always listen before you try to fix anything. That's true for machines, people, and life." Alan chuckled at that. He hadn't expected wisdom with his morning coffee. But standing there, he realized something important. The company didn't just need better machines. It needed to listen to the people who kept them running. And Tom had been trying to teach that all along. Alan smiled and stepped closer. "I'd like to offer Liam a paid summer internship," he said. "He's got real talent. And maybe, if you're open to it, I'd like to bring you both into our design team. We could use your experience and his fresh ideas." Tom looked at him for a moment, not saying a word. Then he nodded slowly. "All right," he said, "but only on one condition." Alan raised an eyebrow. "You have to come down here every once in a while, not just to check on us, but to actually learn." Alan laughed and held out his hand. "Deal." They shook on it. For the first time in a long while, both men felt like something important had just started, something bigger than just machines. A few weeks later, the factory unveiled a brand new grain sorter. It was faster, smarter, and easier to repair. The engineers had done great work, but it was Liam's idea that started it and Tom's wisdom that shaped it. At the company's big meeting, Alan Thorne proudly spoke about the project. He didn't take the credit. Instead, he talked about a teenager with oil on his hands and a father who believed machines had souls. Everyone listened. The story wasn't just about fixing equipment. It was about learning where true ideas come from and who they come from. People didn't forget that speech. It made them see the company and each other a little differently. The story quickly spread, not just inside the company, but far beyond it. People didn't talk about the machine getting fixed. They talked about a quiet boy with steady hands, a father who stayed humble, and a CEO who learned to see things differently. Alan Thorne had once believed that big ideas only came from boardrooms. But now he knew better. Real talent doesn't need a title. Wisdom doesn't always wear a tie. And sometimes the biggest changes come from the quietest moments. What started with a broken machine ended with something stronger, a reminder that heart can guide a company better than rules ever could.